After 20 years together, he looked across the table one evening and told me he needed space. Not "I'm unhappy," not "we need to talk." Just three simple words that tore apart a marriage in the middle of dinner between the chicken, parmesan, and dessert. He couldn't even meet my eyes. His gaze lingered on the condensation sliding down his glass, as though water rings were more deserving of his attention than the woman who had devoted 2 decades of her life to him. The real story began weeks earlier, in a cold examination room where pastel walls and posters about courage felt like cruel jokes. The doctor's voice was steady but soft as she explained, stage 2 breast cancer. Early enough for hope, but heavy enough to crush me. I nodded, asked all the right questions, scheduled surgery, even thanked her. Inside, I felt detached, as though the word belonged to someone else not at home. The silence was louder than the diagnosis. My husband had been promoted recently, buried in work, basking in recognition. I had played my part: the dinners, the charity events, the endless invisible labor that propped up his success. Now, illness threatened to disrupt that perfectly polished life. I rehearsed how to tell him, promising myself I'd be calm, rational. But when I arrived home, the house was empty. A text blinked on my phone. Working late. Don't wait up. The third time that week, dot in the quiet kitchen, I ran my fingers over the marble countertop we had chosen during our 10th anniversary renovation. When had our home turned into a showroom instead of a sanctuary? When had I become just another accessory in his climb upward? The signs had been there: the sudden gym membership, the designer suits, the unfamiliar cologne, the distance, the late nights, the way he flinched at my touch. And yet, I had kept pretending. One morning, I tried to tell him, but he brushed me off, eyes glued to his phone. Court in an hour. No time. The news sat heavy in my chest, unspoken. Days turned into weeks. I went to oncology appointments alone. I told myself I was being independent, not abandoned. But in the stillness, the truth was undeniable. Something was unraveling. The evidence mounted. Jewelry purchases I hadn't seen. Restaurant bills for dinners too intimate to be business. Phone calls whispered from the garage. Lipstick on his collar, an audacious shade I would never wear. Then one Friday evening, he announced we needed a special dinner. My heart leapt. Maybe he had realized what really mattered. Maybe illness had opened his eyes. I told my sister. She warned me not to hope, but I clung to the possibility. At the restaurant, the air was heavy, his nervous glances betraying the truth before the words left his mouth. "I need space," he said, cutting me off as I finally tried to tell him about the cancer. Just like that, 20 years were dismissed as if they were a failed contract. When I asked if there was someone else, his silence answered before his confession did. His secretary. It just happened, he said. As though betrayal were an accident, as though vows were expendable. He pushed a business card across the table. His lawyers. He had already moved out. I placed my napkin beside the untouched meal, stood, and walked out with my dignity intact, but my heart in pieces. The divorce papers arrived within days. Cold lines dividing 20 years into property and percentages. He had even itemized the pearls he once gave me as an anniversary gift. I should have fought back. I should have called my own lawyer. But instead I signed. Not out of surrender, but strategy. What he didn't know was that his father and I had always shared a bond. It was his father who revealed the truth. He had rewritten his will after losing his wife, including a moral clause. If his son ever divorced me without cause, he would lose everything: the family business, the estate, the lake house where so many memories lived. That knowledge became my quiet weapon. While he flaunted his new engagement online, while the world congratulated him, I carried a different kind of power. He thought he had walked away free, but he had no idea the ground beneath him was already crumbling. And so, as he celebrated his proposal at the very lake house he thought would one day be his, I appeared unannounced. I handed him an envelope and offered my congratulations. Inside lay the truth, the clause that stripped him of everything he believed was secure. His fiancée's scream cut through the air. Sharp and priceless. Justice, I realized, doesn't always come quickly. Sometimes it waits, silent, patient, until the perfect moment to arrive. I was constructing a new life, piece by piece. The calendar on my phone glared back at me. 3 weeks until the engagement party at Lakeview Cottage. 3 weeks to prepare for the confrontation that would dismantle the illusion he had so carefully built. Just as he had dismantled mine. Radiation. Treatments drained me, each session carving exhaustion into my bones. Yet every time the technician counted down, 3 more to go, I felt it wasn't just treatment ending, but a chapter of my life. Each appointment pulled me further from the shadow of betrayal and closer to reclaiming myself. You don't have to keep his name, my sister remarked one afternoon as she drove me home. You were yourself long before him. Her words struck harder than she knew. I had been so focused on what was stolen from me that I had forgotten what I still possessed, the right to reclaim myself. The very next day, I stood at the courthouse, pen in hand, restoring my maiden name. The clerk, a seasoned woman with sharp eyes, stamped the form and gave a knowing smile. Best decision I ever made, she whispered. Welcome back to yourself. That single act sparked something fierce in me. I met with my old mentor, a woman who had shattered glass ceilings long before anyone thought it possible. When I told her about the betrayal, the illness, the will, and the looming engagement party, her response was sharp and practical. You'll need documentation, proof, and you'll reveal it when it matters most. Within hours, legal steps were taken to secure a certified copy of the will. Airtight and undeniable. As my allies gathered, so did my strength. My prognosis brightened. I found my own apartment, secured my finances, and even accepted kindness from unlikely places. A neighbor who had once been closer to my husband than me brought homemade soup and a quiet warning. He's been telling people you've had emotional problems for years, he admitted, ashamed on his behalf. But I know the truth. If you ever need someone to speak up, I will. It stung, though it was hardly surprising. He had always rewritten the story to suit himself. Now he was rewriting me. But I refused to let his lies define me any longer. Weeks before the party, preparations turned tangible. My sister helped me choose a slate blue dress, simple yet commanding, one that revealed my silver-streaked hair instead of hiding it. You look powerful, she said. For the first time, I felt powerful too. The emotional preparation was the hardest. Each night, I rehearsed the scene. His carefully crafted smile crumbling, her confusion shifting to dread. My words, calm and detached, slicing through the charade, not angry, not bitter. Simply truth, delivered like a verdict. 1 week out, his father called. He invited me, he said, but I declined. Better I arrived the morning after, with the official inheritance letter in hand. Timing is everything. His voice carried a satisfaction that steadied me. On the eve of my departure, I scrolled through social media. She had posted photos of the cottage interior, antique furniture gone, family photos replaced with sterile decor. A caption declared #new beginnings. It was no longer the refuge I once cherished, but a stage set for their reinvention. I zipped my bag, slid the envelope with the will into my purse, and realized something profound. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about consequences. The next day, the Vermont countryside unfolded before me like a memory. Each bend in the road whispered reminders of anniversaries, summers, and seasons long gone. But when the cottage came into view, freshly painted shutters glaring white, the past fell silent. This was no longer ours. It was his illusion, and I was here. To unravel it, the driveway brimmed with expensive cars. Lanterns swayed in the breeze. Music drifted across the lake. I paused in my car, studying the reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me wasn't the one who once signed away her marriage in quiet resignation. This version stood, straighter, her silver hair catching the light, her eyes steady and unflinching. I arrived deliberately late, knowing every guest would be present. Conversations faltered as I entered, heads turning, whispers rising like a tide. I walked calmly through the garden, heels pressing into the grass, envelope clutched in my hand. There he stood, arm around her waist, basking in admiration. She noticed me first. Her smile froze, eyes widening. A tug at his sleeve drew his attention. He turned, and for a moment the mask slipped. Shock, panic, then composure. Always composure? This is unexpected, he said, voice pitched for the audience. Gathering around us. I smiled lightly, my words cutting through the hush. Congratulations on your engagement. I won't stay long. I extended the envelope. He didn't take it. His eyes darted toward the crowd, toward the whispers swelling around us. She leaned closer, her hand tightening on his arm, but the silence of the guests told me all I needed to know. The reckoning had begun. Her hand tightened possessively around his arm, nails pressing into his sleeve. What is it? She asked, her voice pitched higher than usual. Just a copy of something he should have read years ago, I answered evenly. Your future father-in-law's will. Specifically, the moral clause about divorce. His face, drained of color. What are you talking about? I opened the envelope slowly, deliberately, and drew out the notarized document. The gold seal glinted under the lantern light. This clause was added 6 years ago. It states clearly, if you initiate divorce against me without proving infidelity, you forfeit the entirety of your inheritance. She snatched the paper, eyes devouring each line, her manicured nails crumpling the edges. This can't be legal, she hissed, shoving it toward him. Tell her it's not legal. But he stood frozen, shoulders stiff, finally absorbing. The magnitude of his miscalculation, my father would never. His words trailed off, conviction already gone. He did it because he saw who you truly were, I said softly. Long before I did, a hush rippled through the crowd. Guests craned to hear, the music silenced, lanterns swaying above us like watchful witnesses. His managing partner stood nearby, expression hard, already calculating the fallout. Everything. I continued, voice steady, cutting through the stillness. The firm shares, this cottage, the investment accounts. All of it reverts to the chosen charity. I let the silence breathe before adding, unless, of course, you can prove I was unfaithful. Her face twisted with fury. You planned this. You manipulated an old man to ruin us. I shook my head. This decision was made years before you even appeared. I only learned of it after he walked out. One of the senior partners stepped forward, tone sharp. Is this true? Your shares aren't secure. His composure cracked. It's a misunderstanding. There must be a loophole. He reached for the document with trembling hands. This official notice arrives tomorrow morning, I said, pulling the paper back. Consider this an early warning. And a personal congratulations. She stared at him in horror as the truth sank in. The dream she had clung to, the prestigious partner. The cottage, the secured future collapsed in an instant. Her scream ripped through the air, raw and violent, scattering birds from the trees. You said everything was taken care of. She shrieked at him. You promised me. I turned and walked away, leaving the chaos unraveling behind me. Shouts, gasps, his desperate attempts to salvage the wreckage. For months, I had carried anger like a stone in my chest. Now it lifted, replaced by something unexpected. Pity. He would lose everything that mattered to him, his reputation, his inheritance, perhaps even his partnership. And none of it required my vengeance. From my car, I looked back once at the lanterns. Swaying emptily, the string quartet silenced mid-note. The perfect engagement had curdled into a public disaster. I started the engine and drove into the quiet. That night at the inn, I sat by the lake with room service untouched, my phone buzzing endlessly, friends gossiping, messages piling up. Even calls from his father, I silenced them all. I had imagined this moment endlessly, rehearsed the taste of triumph. Instead, there was only a hollow stillness, as though anger had burned itself out and left me empty by morning. The storm had spread. Word traveled fast. She had hurled her ring into the lake. He had drowned himself in whiskey, ranting to the last guest who'd listen. His father's voicemail was calmer. I've arrived. The lawyer delivered the official notice. He looks devastated. Drove back slowly, pausing at mountain overlooks, letting the air cleanse me. Near the city, his name flashed on my phone. For a heartbeat, I considered ignoring it. But something told me closure demanded this last conversation. His voice was raw, unfamiliar. We need to talk. We met at a small cafe. He looked diminished, rumpled. Clothes, stubble, eyes rimmed red. The crisp facade had finally cracked. She's gone, he muttered. The firm suspended me. My father won't take my calls. You've destroyed everything. You did that yourself, I said quietly. The waitress approached, sensed the tension, and retreated without a word. Why didn't you tell me about the clause? He demanded, leaning in. All those weeks, would it have changed anything? Would you have stayed? His silence answered for him. I didn't do this to hurt you. I just stopped shielding you from consequences. And now you get the satisfaction of watching me lose everything. The inheritance goes to charity. I get nothing. I studied him, this man I had once built my life around. But I did gain one thing, the strength to stand for myself. I drew a breath. There's something else. I had cancer. Stage 2. I found out 3 weeks before you left. His face went slack with shock. I tried to tell you that night, but you were too busy explaining why you needed space. I'm in remission now. The prognosis is excellent. I'm telling you because I'm done with secrets. For the first time in decades, he had no words. I continued, calmer than I'd ever been. I thought losing you meant losing everything. But I was wrong. I didn't lose myself. I found her. Days later, his resignation made headlines. Colleagues distanced themselves. Friends who once defended him suddenly remembered old loyalties to me. The social tides shifted, but I watched from the shore, unmoved. My focus had turned inward. Spring brought unexpected renewal. A job offer, work I was truly suited for, skills I had once hidden in the shadow of his career, now recognized as my own. Months passed. Then came a letter. The cottage was being sold. Enclosed was a small key. The garden shed still held my grandmother's. Tools. They belonged, I was told, to someone who understood how to grow things. I returned one last time. The shutters already peeling, the cottage hollow. In the shed, I found not only the tools, but photo albums, carefully preserved fragments of a family, of a life. A familiar car pulled in. He stepped out, looking worn, yet softer, humility written into his frame. He handed me a velvet box earrings. I felt long lost. I should have given these back months ago. I was too angry now. I'm just rebuilding one day at a time. We sat on the dock in silence, watching the water catch the light as it once had. You know what's strange? I whispered. I don't regret any of it anymore. Not even the end. He nodded slowly. I think I'm starting to understand that. As the sun set, we parted. Not as enemies, not as lovers, but as two people who had finally let go. I drove away from the cottage for the final time, photo albums beside me, the past laid to rest.